I think she's going to do a video.
Hi, everyone. Tanaz, can you put me on the stage? Hi, everyone. I'm Anjali Raghbir here. I run Writers Key, an education consultancy based out of New Delhi, India. I'm delighted to bring to you this program, which is College 1.0. In this, we've brought together global experts from across the world to make your college application journey easy. And today, the first session that we have, there are two parallel sessions actually. There's one on debate and speech, which is happening in the Workshop with Experts Pavilion. And the one that you're in right now is being held by Lumiere Education. It is being moderated by my dear friend, Monica Sagar, who is the principal of Shivnadar Gurgaon. She's been super supportive of all our ventures, all our webinars. And thank you, Monica, for supporting this. And thank you so much to the Lumiere team, including Rushma and Ishita, who are going to share their delightful journey of research with Lumiere. So I open this event with Lumiere Education and Rajiv Kachoria's speech and debate. I look forward to seeing you. Do switch around between sessions because we have plenty of them planned for the evening between 5 and 9 p.m. I'm sure you can go to the help desk of Writers Key and get more information of how you can do all of them. So welcome to College Brew 1.0.
Thank you so much for having us. It looks like Monica ma'am, who is moderating our panel, is in the process of connecting. So hopefully she's able to join us in just a second. Over to you, Monica ma'am, now that you're here. Looks like she might be having some issues, but no harm, no foul. While waiting for that, I think we can kick off with a round of introductions. My name is Dhruva. I'm super excited to be here. I grew up in Chennai, not too far from where many of you are. I went to Harvard, where I did my undergrad degree in economics, and I'm now a PhD student at Oxford studying international development. And I also run Lumiere, which is a selective research program for high school students from around the world. And I'll pass it over to Stephen to introduce himself, and then over to Ishita and Rushma as well.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. Really great to see everyone here today. So I'm Stephen. I'm the other director and founder of Lumiere. We started Lumiere as a PhD student at Harvard Business School. Before then, I was a classmate of Dhruva's at Harvard College, where I had my first research experience at this amazing research program that Dhruv and I met at, where I worked with this important mentor in my life, this guy, David, who became like a father figure for me. So a big reason why I care so much about research is because of the amazing experiences that I've had as a student and the great mentors that I've had in that process. So really excited to meet you all. Ishita, I'll pass to you, and then Rishma, I guess, after that.
Ishita, we're not able to hear you, unfortunately.
Can you guys hear Ishita? I cannot hear you, Ishita. Ishita, while you're maybe checking out your audio, Rishma, I'll pass to you. Yourself.
Yeah, of course. Hi, guys. My name is Rishma, and currently I am in 11th grade at the American Embassy School, and I'm currently doing the IB diploma. And I've moved around quite a bit. So I was in India before, to San Diego, California, which was a really nice place. And now I'm back here, and yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
And Rishma, before we dive into more, I'd love to hear a bit about sort of why you're here, what you do research on, and what your association with Lumiere is as well.
Yeah, so I have always wanted to do research because I am a very curious person, and especially because I'm interested in the field of medicine. There are so many questions that aren't answered. And so through Lumiere, I was able to have this independent research project. And so I wrote about how sickle cell anemia can be treated by CRISPR-Cas9. And yeah, and that research really taught me how to think about medicine in a completely different way, and have this research project, which was such an amazing experience because it was guided all throughout, and yeah, I just felt supported throughout the entire process of research.
That's awesome. And so while we wait for Ishita to join us, Ishita, are you here? Are you able to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, am I audible now?
Awesome. Loud and clear.
Great. The Cathedral and John Connon School in Mumbai. And my research was on the Ocean Health Index, or the OHI of the high seas, or the open ocean, and specifically how it can be used to assess climate change using novel data science sources. And the reason I took this topic and sort of got into research was because it combined marine biology, which is something I'm so excited to pursue, and something like data science, which we don't really have the option of studying in school, and it's something completely different. And so that combination was perfect for me.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that, guys, and for joining us here. The way that the rest of this sort of half an hour that we have together will progress is that Stephen and I would love to introduce all of you to Lumiere and research in high school and why it's important. And then we'll switch back to Rishma and Ishita because no one wants to listen to Stephen and me speak for too long. And I know you're all here to hear about these guys and their experience in the program. And then finally, we'll have some time for questions at the end. But Rishma and Ishita are just two of over 230 students who've done the Lumiere research program so far, and who've studied topics ranging from really everything from art history and genetics and data science all the way through to economics and political science and international relations. So a whole gamut of topics that you can imagine being excited by and interested in. And the way we're structured is that we're a 12-week research program. So we get students from around the world who apply, we interview them, and if you get selected, you get matched with a mentor who's a PhD student at a top university, a top research university in the US or the UK. And you work one-on-one with them on a research project of your own. So you spend the first couple of weeks exploring the topic. So maybe the mentor is assigning you a couple of papers to read, a video to watch, an activity to go away and do. And that way you get your feet wet in the topic. You learn what's going on. You understand how research works. And then you pick a research question of your own that you dive into for the rest of the program, where you are doing the reading, collecting the data, analyzing it, putting together a research paper, and you come out of this program with a 20-page research paper that you've worked on, that you can be really proud of, and that can help you as you think about your next steps towards university, towards internships, and beyond. And so I'll pass it over to Stephen to say a little bit more about why research is important and the role that it plays in the context of your high school journey and especially college applications as well.
Excellent. Yeah. So I think it's a really good question and an important one for everyone here. I think when you think about why do research, and particularly as you think about it, and so far it connects to your next steps, thinking about applying to university, internships, whatever it might be. I think there's really three things for that colleges look at when they see someone who's done research. I think the first one is that they see someone who's gone through something that's pretty difficult. I think Rushma and Ishita can speak to this. Research is certainly not easy because what you're doing is you're trying to discover or push out something new that we haven't understood before, that we've only understood in vague terms, or we've misunderstood in the past. And so as you are doing research, you think about universities, the professors who are teaching you, they become professors not because they got the best SAT scores, but because they did research and their research was successful in proving something important about the world. So when universities look at who've done research, they see someone who has done something difficult, and that's kind of showcased their ability. The second reason, and Ishita and Rishma, I'd love to hear about this with you all, is you develop a relationship with a mentor, and this is something I think is both I already talked about my mentor, David, who had been incredibly important in my life. There's someone who can help you out in very practical ways, supporting you in your college application process. But I also think even more so, just providing someone who's as a role model to say, okay, this person who's done it, who I understand, who I think is fun, is relatable. Certainly, I can do it because I've worked with them. I know what they're like. And then finally, when you do research, you create something, a physical product or a kind of a knowledge piece that you can then share, whether you're attaching it to your college application, whether you're submitting it to research publications. And it's something that is a representation of that interest that you have. Like Ishita talks about her interest in both data science and in marine biology. And clearly that's something in her work that she's showcased both very deeply by doing something that is quite novel. Actually, especially with this piece, thinking about the Ocean Health Index, why haven't we incorporated these other novel sources that Ishita will talk about later. So when you think about research, there's a real direct connection to you and your missions. Of course, there's a real, and I think for us, deep connection to your own growth, where you're learning about your own interest by diving into it, and also being pushed to create something new. So that's a little bit on why of research. And Drew, I'll pass back to you.
Wonderful. As I promised, that's the last of Stephen and me going on our soapbox. And we're now going to pass the mic back to Rishma and Ishita. And we have a couple of questions. Stephen and I have been thinking about their journey through the program, and there were some things that we thought would be useful starting points for a conversation. And so, Rishma and Ishita, I would love to hear a bit more. You mentioned the topics in which you did research, but could you tell us a bit more about who the mentors were that you worked with? Because that's obviously such an important part of the experience. Rishma, you can go first if you want.
Okay, yeah, sure. So my mentor was Valentina, and I'm actually still working with her in the publication process. And I definitely have created such a special bond with her because in the beginning of our sessions, she would explain all the articles to me step by step, and the way that she explained it always stuck with me. And the information that she taught me, I still remember to this day. And going forward, I'm also going to always remember it. And she was just always there as such a great support system because, especially this being my first research project, it was very overwhelming to get all of the information. But then with my mentor, it became a really guided process that I was able to follow through really well. And the connection lasts with you forever. And with me, Valentina and we share a lot of webinars with each other, and she invited me to CRISPR World to World CRISPR Day, and that was really interesting. And the fact that she is currently working on something that I want to do in the future is honestly surreal, because she can tell me like the real life application of genetic editing, which is something I could have never imagined myself. And so just having that mentor and that guided support, I think, is very important, especially if it being your first research paper. And I'm very grateful for her.
That's awesome. And so Valentina is a PhD at Yale, and in contrast, Ishita, you worked with one of our mentors from the UK. So what
Yeah, so his name is Avon Satcham Malloy, and he got his PhD from Oxford. He was actually a Rhodes Scholar, and he has several other academic accomplishments. But the reason that we worked so well together was because his expertise was in environmental science and data science, and that fits so perfectly with what I was researching. And I think Rushma also mentioned her experience with CRISPR, and through Avon, I was actually able to attend like an Oxford workshop on navigating the choppy waters of the high seas, which to everyone else might sound odd, but for me that was like a dream. I was speaking to experts in the field for 40 plus years, and legislators and all of them and their experiences at the United Nations and what they're doing to sort of solve this problem that I'm so passionate about. And my relationship with Avon has been so special. I've been able to exchange podcasts and documentaries that we both should be watching and educating ourselves with. And I really think that even beyond what I was learning and what I was working on my paper, I learned so much from him about the field. And he's definitely been a huge inspiration for me.
I feel like I need to start sending more podcasts to the students I work with. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, they listen to podcasts. I need to find stuff. So I'm curious. Maybe Rushma, I could go to you again. If you just talk to me, I know you're in the process right now of taking the research you've done and submitting it to research publications. But talk to me a little bit about the process of doing the research, and what was that like for you, and how has it changed over the course of your time?
Okay, well, so as I began my research journey, I knew I wanted to focus on sickle cell anemia and the study of genetics. And so in the beginning, Valentina helped me form my hypothesis, and that's kind of like one of the first things you work on in like your research question. So when I had that figured out, I had to so Valentina gave me a lot of articles to read, and I had to take notes and try to understand them. And then in our weekly meetings, she would go step by step and explain the entire process to me. So so as I collected all of my information, it seemed really overwhelming, because I could have never imagined that I would have written a paper out of all of that. But when the writing process started, Valentina was such a huge help. Whenever I used to write a section, I used to send it to her, and she used to tell me if I was going on the right track. So I always had that like step-by-step feedback for me. And as I was writing, for me, it was a really smooth process, much smoother than the beginning, because the articles were filled with a lot of medical jargon, and obviously I was not in a position to understand it yet. But with the extra explanation, I was pretty comfortable with reading the articles going forward. And then writing the paper was, as I said, very smooth for me. I just started to write, and it just started to fit well. And yeah, it seemed a little overwhelming in the beginning, but as you go through and you have that support with you, it starts to just flow really well.
I like that. I like that feeling of growth. Certainly, I totally agree with you. The first time you read an academic article, you're like, oh my God, what is this? It's like, also, why would you write it like this? So I think that's a really important growth story. Maybe Ishita, I can pass to you as well, if you could talk a little bit. I know you have some slides to talk about your research process. You can share that with us.
Yeah, so I think when I first joined Lumiere, you're introduced to the timeline of when you should have a research question and a research proposal and then your first draft, and it's all really well broken up. But what works so well for me is that the actual syllabus, I guess, for lack of a better word, that you're working on is personalized to you. So your mentor talks to you and kind of understands what you wanted to do. So for me, the first about 4 weeks of my program, I was just learning. I was just learning about the field and different things and exploring different topics. And specifically, I worked with data science, which is something I have some coding experience, but I had never worked with Python before. So I learned Python specifically for data science in that period. And I didn't end up using a lot of it in my paper itself, but it was still an amazing life skill. And so coming to my research in my paper, I think I will attempt to share some slides about what exactly it was that I came up with. Yeah. Is my screen visible?
It's not yet visible. Oh,
Is
there we
it
go.
now?
Perfect.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I sort of talked about the limitations that were already existing in the Ocean Health Index. And like I talked about, the main thing was the lack of data. So what you see on the right is sort of the 10 goals that the OHI is supposed to target. But when it came to the high seas regions, they were only including 3 of these goals: food provision, sense of place, and biodiversity. But with the introduction of new data sources, I was able to suggest a new structure that would enable us to actually target 7 out of 10 goals at the least. So that in itself was a huge improvement. And speaking of these data sources, the data sources that I worked with were the sea level change observations from NASA, ARGO, the Global Ocean Acidification Network, and SOCAT. And what's great about these is that they're actually open source. So I was able to look at the numbers and look at how it would be incorporated into the existing OHI structure. I think that's all from me.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing a bit about your guys' research. And I think to one of the questions that was being posed here, which is how can you do research without being in a field or the lab? I think these guys' examples of research are really good samples for how you can do it. So in Rishma's case, she engaged in a deep review of existing papers and put forward an original argument based on the existing evidence that she supported using the latest research and what information she's gathered. In Ishita's case, on the other hand, she used quantitative data and proposed a way of using new forms of data to answer the questions that she was curious about. So there's really many different ways in which you can do research from right from your own bedrooms using your computers, and that's the kind of research that our students do. And actually going into a lab or a field, it might be hard for many of you given the pandemic, given you're still in high school and might not have access to these sorts of things. And Lumiere can be a really effective way of getting started with research. And then in the future, if you're able to access a lab and able to use it, that's an amazing next step for you as well to develop on the research that you've done. So Rishma and Ishita, I have a question for you guys, which is you have said things about the program that have really made me blush, and I'm glad to hear that you've enjoyed it, but you've also made it sound like it was a really smooth process all the way through. And I get that the two of you are brilliant, but I really don't think that it could have gone all the way through without hiccups, because that's what research is like. So I'd love to hear a little bit about sort of what some challenges you faced when you were doing research were, or what you learned about yourself and about your topic through doing the program, and any challenges that you faced. Ishita, over to you first.
Yeah, sure. So I think Rushma talked about how, reading academic papers and all was very intimidating in the beginning, and then the writing process was kind of smooth sailing for her. I'm someone who loves to write, and my final paper was 35 pages long, but getting started with writing was like almost impossible for me. Even though I had researched, I knew my matter, I found the reading extremely interesting. But when it came down to write, it was very difficult to start writing, because you would go down this rabbit hole of, okay, let me fact check this again, let me edit this, let me do that. So I found that extremely difficult, and it was very slow in the beginning. But I sat down with my mentor, and he suggested I put aside like 2 golden hours to write, where I'm just writing, not editing, not formatting, not looking at anything else. And I did that, and it did require discipline. It did require some amount of time and commitment. But once I got into that flow, it was much, much easier for me to continue writing and then go back and add citations or whatever else I was missing. So I think the writing process is actually much, much heavier or much, much tougher for me than the rest of the program was, because there I was still learning and fascinated by it. But when it comes to writing your own paper, it is a lot of effort and time.
That's very fair. And I think just even now as a PhD student, putting the words down on the paper can be one of the things that's the scariest when there's a blank screen ahead of you. But I think breaking it down into more manageable tasks and getting the encouragement of someone to do it is super useful as a step towards that process. So Rishma, what about you? I know writing was not the part that you struggled with. Was there anything else that you found challenging during?
Yeah. Okay. Well, so one I found challenging was definitely managing my time, because I just started 11th grade. I was just starting the IB diploma, and it's a really heavy course load. And I was also studying for the ACT at the time, so it was a lot of stuff going on, and that was really challenging in the beginning because I was given like 4 to 5 articles to read and take notes on every single week, and the articles were also very long, so that definitely took me a lot of time. But as Ishita mentioned, she set aside 2 golden hours to write. I did that in the beginning. For every week, I set up like a time slot to just read the articles, focus on that, not focus on anything else, and just take the notes. And obviously that helped because I was I believe I came prepared for all of my meetings with my mentor, and that made for the sessions to be super productive because I could ask any questions, and slowly you just kind of adopt this schedule, and you kind of adopt this research project into your schedule, and it becomes part of your week. It's just like a part of your daily life, and I think that that process also comes smoothly and with practice. And as Ishita said, it really does take a lot of discipline to do that. But I think like the articles were really interesting to read, so I was always very motivated to actually do the work, and I always looked forward to reading those articles and learning new things. So yeah.
I love to hear that. And just as a way of wrapping up this section, what's happened after the research program? So I know you did the 12-week program, you completed your paper. How that impacted the rest of your life, what you've done after, the IB, college applications, continuing research, not continuing research, what's been going on? Maybe Rishma first and then over to Ishita after that.
Yeah, so currently I'm in the process of publishing my my research paper, and right now, so I'm doing all the final edits, and I'm going to be ready to start the publishing process very soon. But in terms of how it's impacted me, it's definitely a lot of information that I've learned through reading the articles and writing my paper, and it's honestly crazy that I can talk about the research that I did really easily because it's stuff that I really know, and it's definitely opened a lot of opportunities for me, and I am very keen on doing more research, more in-depth research, because there are a lot of limitations that I found to my research topic, and so that question that I started with posed a bunch of different questions at the end. And I think that is something I definitely want to explore further during the IB diploma and also all throughout college.
That's really cool. And there's a question in here about what kinds of publications students target. And I think the answer to that is it really depends on the quality of the final paper and what your goals through the process are. But many of our students work towards high school or college level journals. And so this might be something that not many of you are aware of, but these are journals that are set up to be rigorous and to highlight quality work, but work specifically done by young researchers such as Rushma and Ishita. And so that's a fantastic process to go through if you want to understand how academia works while still getting the fulfillment of getting feedback and improving your paper through the process. So that's just to answer that question. And thank you, Rishma. I'm so glad that you did the program, that you're continuing with research. And I'll pass it over to you, Ishita, before we wrap up the section.
Thank you. So for me, how has research affected my life? I would say in every way, pretty much. Specifically, what I decided to work on is something that I'm so passionate about. And, it is sometimes hard to get in and understand everything that's going on in whatever the field that you want to pursue. So I think this was a great door to that. And for example, I stayed up live to watch the launch of Sentinel-6, which is a satellite that measures sea data observations. And I mentioned in my paper exactly what this would do and how it would benefit the data that I'm working with. So I think just that and just keeping up with what you want to do and what you want to study is a huge thing that's going to help you, especially going into college. And also, I would say the Lumiere community in general, just being here today is such a great experience and opportunity. I was also able to be part of the student advisory board where we actually contribute and are instrumental in how the program can be improved for students like you. There's also an online platform where different alumni and current scholars from all around the world, no matter where they are in their research journeys, are able to interact. And I think that's something amazing. That's something that I took away from the program, that it was definitely the most interesting thing that happened to me in lockdown, and I wouldn't have had this opportunity had it not been for Lumia. So I think that was something wonderful that I took away from this experience.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm going to quickly just share screen and share a little bit about the types of programs, the application process. We'll spend like 2 minutes on this and then just pass any questions that people might have. So I'm going to attempt to screen share right now. Ishita, I'm looking at you. You've done it once before, so tell me if I do it correctly. How does that look? Someone give me a...
So it looks just like the one on Zoom, except it's white. It's next to the microphone, yeah.
But can you see the screen?
It's saying you're going to present to everyone.
Okay. I can see the screen. So Ishita, I think this might be on.
Yeah, I can see it too.
Perfect. So there are 3 programs that students could consider applying into if they want to apply. The upcoming application deadline for the summer cohort, or round 2 application deadline, is April 30th. We've both, Ishita and Rushma, did the individual research program, which is a 12-week program, which you work one-on-one with a research mentor. And the end goal is for you to develop that independent research paper. We've developed a slightly longer program where the goal is to help students both not only develop the paper, but also then take it to these selective high school research journals or competitions and submit it there. That's a slightly longer program, usually 16 to 20 weeks. And then finally, there's a topic-focused research program. You can think of this as a small seminar that breaks off into one-on-one program. And so for the first 4 weeks, you're working in a small group of 2 to 4 other students, or 1 to 3 other students. So 2 to 4 in total. And then you break one-on-one with your research mentor. So the mentors are all the same. They're all these remarkable researchers from top 10 departments in their field who are like Valentina, like Avin, really just excited about mentoring and really care about it. But there's slightly different flavors to what that research project could be like in the different programs. The application process, a selective program, because research is hard, and certainly while we are excited about making research accessible to as many students as possible, not all students are prepared to do research. And so we want to bring on students who we think will be a good fit and will be successful in the program. So first set is the application itself, which requires time to think about what is it you're interested in, why are you a good candidate for the program. Then for a subset of those students, we interview them. The interview process is with one of our staff members. We're trying to understand both A, are you a good fit for the program, and then B, who would be the right mentor for you if you were brought into the program, and then kind of the mission process from there. I will note that we do have financial aid available for the program, so if you have financial need, it's need-based aid, and so I'd still encourage you to apply. And maybe just finally, we're looking for students who are just like Rushma and Ishita, have 3 traits. One is that they have strong academic backgrounds, that's an indicator of their interest in the field. You don't need a perfect SAT score to become an amazing researcher, as many of my professors proved at Harvard. But we're also looking for students who are very curious, excited about the field, excited about what they're interested in. And then finally, we're looking for students who are able to work independently and diligently. Research is hard, and so it does require that outside work. So anyways, that's a really brief on the program. In the chat, I'll just throw the application link so you guys have that. Yeah, exactly. You're a step ahead of me. And then Dhruva, I'll pass to you for any questions or anything else you think we should be answering. Yep, Dhruva's answer.
Awesome. So there's a couple of questions on here. One question is, which of the three programs Rushma and Ishita were part of? Both of them did the one-on-one research scholar program, so the one in the middle, and then Rushma has since progressed on to working on publication with us as well. There's a question about, for someone who's never done any formal research or doesn't exactly understand the process, is there going to be an introduction to research? So the benefit of it being a one-on-one program is that the mentor is able to scale the level at which they pitch work to you to the level that you come in with. And so what that means is if you come in with little research experience, it's going to be hard, but it's going to be doable because you can have that conversation with your mentor about what level you're coming in at and what support you need in order to be successful. And we also have some workshops over the course of the program so that you're able to meet the other students in the cohort and engage with kids from 15 other countries who do our programs and learn about those basic things of research. Things like, what's a literature review? What's a citation and how do you do it? How do you anticipate problems that you might encounter during research and figure out how to overcome them in advance? So those are all workshops that we absolutely provide you with. And I think we've had students come in who are curious and smart and motivated, but without necessarily research experience and who've seen a total transformation in themselves over the course of 3 months. And that's exactly our hope. There's a question about whether research papers are required for college. So I don't think anyone would say that research or debate or music or any one extracurricular is required for college. Once you enter college, you will all be reading research papers. Regardless of which subject you take, learning how to read research papers is a useful skill because it's something that you'll do in every class at university. And you will go on to write your own papers in most colleges, in most disciplines. That said, if the question is specifically about getting into college, I think research is something that demonstrates your interest in a subject, your academic excellence, and definitely helps. But I would definitely not say that that's something that's necessary to do in the way that no extracurricular is necessary to do in order to get into a college. We have a question from Divyansh about the cost. So if you visit our booth, you'll see our brochure, which has the details of the cost of each of the programs. But so the individual program that Rushma and Ishita were a part of and that we've had a number of other students do, the tuition fee for that program is $2,400. And the financial aid that's available is based on need, and we try to be as generous as we can with it. And if you go on the application link, you'll see details about how to apply for financial aid as well. Great. We're almost at time. So, Stephen, are there any last questions that we need to respond to?
I don't think there's any in particular. I just want to say a big thank you to Rushma and Ishita. You guys are incredible, and I'm so impressed at how eloquently you guys speak about the research you did. Certainly more eloquently than I did about my senior thesis when I was 5 years older than you. So I am very jealous of your ability, and it's a testament to both of you and our gratitude to you for coming today.
And thank you to Writers Key for organizing this as well, and all of you for attending. We'll be in the booth, so if you join us there, you can ask us any questions you have, anything you're curious about, and and want to get information on. But otherwise, our website is in the chat and our application link is on the chat. And we look forward to reading as many of your applications as possible. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you, Stephen, Dhruva, Rushma, and Ishita for joining us today. Please note that the Profile Building Pavilion will be on break for 30 minutes, after which you can join the next talk, which is the Research 101 with CCIR. Hello, Mr. David, you can start now.
Okay. Good evening, or morning, or good day, wherever you happen to be in the world. Welcome to the session on psychometric testing and college majors. We have
Thank you, David. And good evening, or as you say, good afternoon, or whatever time it is to all of you. Here at MFC, we believe that every young person deserves the opportunity to succeed. And we believe they can if they're given the right information and the right guidance. And this is what we have been working on over the last 30 years or so when we've been in operation. There's an overwhelming amount of choice for young people, careers, courses, different institutions. And what we try to do is help them to focus on a manageable number of areas in which they can then do in-depth research in order that they make an informed choice. And we've designed our program specifically to help school-age students make those informed choices in relation to their futures. We have used psychometric testing, and we have also worked very closely with Dr. Charles Johnson, who is a member of the British Psychological Society, and he has been the technical man behind all our testing and ensured that they have high technical standards. They're all registered tests with the British Psychological Society, so we feel very happy with the work that has been done. Psychometric tests can give insights into abilities, interests, preferences, and so on. And they're objective, where they're aptitude tests, they can be standardized, and of course they give rigorous assessment. So what we have used in our case is two types of psychometric tests. We've used the interest inventories, which we use in our My Careers Choices program and My University Choices program. And we've used aptitude tests of general ability, which helps us to give additional information when we're working together, if you've got somebody guiding you as a student, or if the student is working on their own. These are additional pieces of information which we help to build up to create as much information as we can surrounding the individual student's situation. So if I explain to you a little more detail about the three tests that I think you'll probably be most interested in. We have a My Career Choices test. This is based on an inventory of 300 interest-based questions. And from those responses to the questions, we produce an interest profile, a personalized one for each student. And these then give you, in order of priority, your career areas which seem to be most important to you. In addition, for the My Uni Choices program, we have 150 questions, and they also produce a profile, an interest profile based on course areas which universities offer. So we have 54 or 56 course areas, and in the case of the careers, we have about 50 different careers areas. In the My Aptitude tests, which we also utilize, we have 8 tests, and we use the abstract reasoning, verbal reasoning, numerical reasoning, spelling, working quickly and accurately, spatial reasoning, both in 2 and 3 dimensions, and we also have some arithmetic calculation, which we expect students to do without calculators. And these tests are norm referenced. So because we've been working globally for many years, we have norms so that we can use them either in the UK or globally with international schools on the whole, or schools in various countries around the world. And we have them referenced for ages, so 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, and so on. And this means when we give the aptitude test results, we are able to compare you as a student with other students likely to go to university, because these are tests on the whole based for students likely to go on and do higher education courses, and we compare you with others of your age. So if you get a percentile score of 85, it means that 15 out of 100 people are doing better than you at this particular aptitude, but 85 out of 100 do as well as you do, or less well. So you get an idea of where the student stands in the overall picture of things. We then put these results together and we feed back to you either online or in a PDF feedback type report, which you can print out. And what we do there is we give you your interest profiles, and I can just illustrate what the profile looks like at the end so you can see. And what we do is we then focus on the top areas that have come up in your feedback reports. So we help you to understand what other jobs or what the various courses are within that course area at a university. This is helping you to get a flavour of what it is that you appear to be interested in, and that's where research has shown you are most successful if you're doing courses which you enjoy and you're interested in. And we then enable you, because we link up in our programs online, to enable you to get started on your research. We will give you extra facilities like a work brief facility, which is all to do with asking key questions in a structured way about what's involved in a career. So we'll help you to know what kind of people do this sort of thing, what opportunities there are, what further training you should do, what salary scales might be. We're helping you to get started on this course of discovery. And for universities, we're helping you to find out more about the courses by linking you through to their websites, so that when you hear from Ben in a minute, if you get law coming up in your interests, you would link through to the University of Birmingham and you would find the Department of Law. You would find how they rank and all the facilities they have, and also things about student accommodation. So we're getting you started. We are not doing the fine tuning. We are starting you off in a realistic way with a manageable amount of courses or careers to research into, and hopefully therefore, because you've got time, because you've reduced your problem to a smaller one, you will do it more thoroughly. And that is the essence of what we're doing for you. So managing it, and all the feedback goes into a thing called My Future Journey, which we have on our site. And that's where you can then start keeping your research findings, all your notes, all the things that you want to help you as you move forward. So this is what it's all about. It's really meant for you before you come to a fair like today. It's meant for you to do your preliminary work, get started, and then home in with the experts such as Ben when you know what it is that is the right sort of career or course area for you. So hopefully you will find us very helpful if you are at the right stage of your research.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, David. And thanks, Joy. Really fascinating insight. We really encourage students to take these first steps in figuring out what they're interested in, because they make this choice to join us later on. So the more information they have, the better. So thanks very much for both of those. So I'm just going to do a bit more of a little focus actually on one of the types of majors that you can study if you spring or if you're already interested in the study of law. So just as a very brief introduction, I'm just going to share a couple of slides to give you a bit of a feel for the University of Birmingham and some information on the law school itself. But as David said, my name's Ben. I work for the Birmingham Law School, and I work really to support students in making the right decision to come to which university is right for them, and also whether the law school here at Birmingham is right for them as well. And I'll give you a bit of information about law and the type of students who do follow us through and what kind of careers come from that as well. And I think there's a really interesting story to tell here. So I work at the University of Birmingham, which is one of the top universities in the UK. We're a top World 100 university and an incredibly old university as well. We're actually the first civic UK university, which means we were the first university in the UK to accept students from all backgrounds and religions and welcome them onto the campus as well, and something we're incredibly proud of. Just to give you a little feel for the university, like I said, we're a top 100 university in the world, so we're on an equivalent with the Ivy League in America. We're part of the Russell Group, which is a group of around about 24 leading UK research-led institutions. And here in the law school, we're incredibly proud of our historic heritage like that. You can see from the slide, we're a really big university, around about 33,000 students studying with us at one time. That's across undergraduate and also postgraduate and research degrees as well. So a really exciting community to be a part of. We're actually the fourth largest university in the UK as well. We cover a huge range of subjects here at Birmingham. I focus on the law school, but there's also things such as business, medicine, medical science, engineering, life and environmental sciences and computer sciences, and also law. But there's also cross-disciplinary between all of those spaces as well. So loads of great opportunities for when you've done the My Future Choices course. You can come and have a look and see how that pans out across to what the University of Birmingham has to offer as well. So just as a quick kind of discussion really is why might you consider a UK law degree? And I think some of the things that have already been mentioned today around the type of personality, the type of interest you have really feed into this as well. But the reason why you might consider a UK law degree over other areas as well is that actually the UK law degree is a world recognised qualification. The University of Birmingham LLB degree is recognised back in India, so you can go back and qualify with our 3-year degree here, but also it's recognised in Singapore, Hong Kong, America, in New York, in the bar exam there. So there's really a whole range of opportunities of what you can do with a law degree. There's also kind of a fantastic range of skills you gain from studying abroad and studying overseas. And part of that, I'm sure, has been fed into this session already, but things that employers are really looking for moving forward. So the law degree is incredibly flexible in that it opens up so many doors to you, and we'll come on to that in a second as well. The other side of it is that actually the studying abroad is a great thing to do for the adventure. You get all these key skills and all these opportunities, but you really don't realise how much there is out there until you do take the leap of faith and join an international institution a little bit outside of your comfort zone as well. So just to give you an idea of how we structure it in the UK, the law degree is what you would consider the major part of the degree. So an LLB is our name for the degree. And here at Birmingham, we run a range of different types of law degrees as well, depending on the area of interest you're considering. So if you are potentially, you want to be an analytical lawyer, but actually you're quite interested in business and commercial side of things, you can actually take a qualifying law degree alongside a business degree. So if you do the My Future Choices thing, and it's actually you're quite interested in the kind of argumentative debate side of law, but also you've got a very analytical brain that you'd like to follow as well. There's different ways you can mix and match the types of degree that you'd have running here. And these are just the ones we have at Birmingham, but most UK law schools will have a variation of this as well. And there's even things that we call joint honours, where you can do part of one subject alongside part of another as well. So you don't always have to just take the first thing that comes up top of your list. You can actually mix and match and try and find the perfect degree that works for you. So I've highlighted the ones here. These are all our 3-year programme. There's also one at the bottom called the LLB for graduates, and that's for students who've already done an undergraduate degree and are then transferring to qualify in the UK as well. So that's not as flexible for students coming from India or from overseas because it's not as recognised in some jurisdictions. So it's worth sticking to the 3-year degree if that's what you're interested in. Now, there's a really nice picture of the University of Birmingham campus, but what I'm just going to talk about briefly now is career options and kind of what comes from this. And you might be surprised to know how varied the opportunities are that come from a law degree. And for those of you who are considering a major in this, or even considering a degree in a whole discipline, you'll see how flexible that the law degree can be in getting you into different places in your career as well. So after a law degree, I can talk about a little bit about what happens from students here. So we take about 500 undergraduate students a year into our law school, so we're quite a big community. And around about 92% of all our students who graduate are in study or work after 6 months after graduating from us here. So there's a real great turnover of students getting straight into the working world, and that's a really important part of choosing the right major and the right degree for you as well, because a lot of people will be here looking for the future and for their careers ahead of them as well. It might surprise you that actually only 50% of law graduates actually go on to work in a legal speciality. So that would be or a barrister here in the UK, but it can be different ranges across the world. 50% of our students go on to do something completely unrelated to the profession. So that can be things like working in policy, working in government, working in charities even. There's loads of different skills you gain as part of a law degree that can help you kind of choose which career progression you want to go down. So if you are really focused, though, on becoming a solicitor, a law degree is a really great way to do that. And working in the legal profession, doing a law degree first will be a fantastic first step into that. So if you wanted to become, in the UK, for example, a solicitor, which is somebody who works a lot of time in the background, working in legal offices, drafting contracts, working with firms and working with industry, go through a commercial 2-year training period through that as well. But there's some changes happening, but we don't unfortunately have time to go into those at the moment. If you're interested in being a barrister, which is something you might have seen more on TV and film, which is somebody who stands up in court and shouts objection and causes a bit of a scene, there's definitely routes into that as well. It's a slightly different route, and again, you follow through with the law degree there. But as I said, only 50% of students who choose the law major go on to this, because there's so much skills that you gain from these degrees. So when you're looking at which major to choose and what is being signposted to you, it's definitely worth considering actually the wider aspect of what careers could lie ahead for you. And just because you take a degree in one subject doesn't mean you have to follow that for the rest of your life as well. So the main bit of advice I'd actually give, because I think I'm running out of time already, is on whatever major you're doing and whatever you're coming up to, the key thing is to develop your knowledge around the subject. So once you've undertaken the My Future Choices tests and you've been given some ideas of what sort of things you'd like to do, then absolutely it's time to start researching and seeing how that actually plays out in real life. And as Joyce was talking about, it sounds like they provide an excellent service there as well. But if you were considering law as your career, I'd recommend you start to actually kind of look at how law is around you, and you'll soon notice that law and legal education is absolutely everywhere. It impacts every aspect of your life. If you're ever considering buying a house or renting a property, there's a huge part of law there. If you're ever looking at emigrating and moving country, there's a huge amount there. But even things like just buying a service online, if you've ever clicked through terms and conditions, somebody's had to write all those and they're bound by law. So it's worth just getting an idea for where these things do fit into everything that happens around. A really key place to start with that actually is just looking at things like local newspapers and international papers, and also online as well. You can get a huge range of opinions, and what law often comes down to is opinions, and that's the sort of thing that you'll get through the My Future Choices things, that where you're you like to share your ideas, you like to discuss and debate, and that's really the essence of what a law degree can come into. But depending on what you're interested in, there's loads of different routes you can take. So what I'd recommend is, if you're looking at a subject in particular, start to see how it applies in the real world, because that's what you'll be learning about when you're studying an undergraduate degree as well, especially here in the UK. So that's the last slide I have. What I've got here, though, is just a little email address. So if you've got any questions about studying law here in the UK at the University of Birmingham, you can drop us an email, and we're really happy to chat and talk through that more. But I'm going to stop there, because I'm sure we've got quite a few questions that to come up to. So, David.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, because of time for questions, which is why you're all here, is to learn more. So I'm going to scroll through, and D have a space, but there's a Q&A box. And I don't think I've got any questions from all 72, I think I counted, of you. All right, so Ben,
The prerequisites. So here at Birmingham, we're actually quite flexible because in India you do the standard 12 qualifications in most cases, and we'd look for 85% as a general rule for students looking to apply for us as an average. But in terms of subjects and backgrounds and things like that, we're actually incredibly open because we recognise that a load of skills and a load of different backgrounds actually support different aspects of different ways of learning the law and practicing it, that we don't really put a required skill set or qualification based on that. Really, we're just looking for a strong average because, as I said, we're quite a high-ranking university and therefore we do need to have quite a high entry requirement. But 85% is what we look for, but in terms of subjects, we're very open to that.
great, thank you. And I think I have a prediction that many of these questions will tend towards Ben. The next question, how does a law degree because I know the structures of law education are incredibly different.
Yeah, absolutely. So a really, really good question, and something that we get quite a lot because actually law in America is studied at a postgraduate level. So you have to have already done an undergraduate, what's often called a pre-law course or a pathway that you follow in an undergraduate degree. Whereas here in the UK, it's studied at an undergraduate level, so straight out of high school. So realistically, if a student is looking to qualify as quickly as possible and start working in the legal world, the UK is always, nearly always, the quicker way to do it. So we've had students who've come from America and also from other states and other countries have come to the UK. They've done their 3-year law degree here, and then they've gone to New York. They've got qualified in the bar there 2 or 3 years before some of their peers have even started doing their qualification for the bar as well. So it's often quicker and cheaper to come and do it in the UK, and you do get a fantastic education level here as well.
Sorts of careers. So I agree. A UK degree is very efficient. Next question. What is the scope for Indian students to secure a training contract in the UK?
Yeah, another fantastic question, and one that we get quite a lot because obviously everybody's looking for those training contracts and those work opportunities and things like that. Actually, in the last couple of weeks, the University of Birmingham was rated as the #1 university in the UK for graduate employability. So we've beaten every other university in the UK for getting our students into those sort of graduate roles. Here at Birmingham, we have something called Kepler as well, which is our Centre for Professional Legal Education and Research. And they provide loads of work experience for students while they're studying here. So we don't expect anybody to come to us with legal work experience before they've even joined. We provide that as part of the degree. And then moving forward, obviously now there's changes in the visa restrictions, so students can stay 2 years post-study. And here in Birmingham, we're actually the second largest city outside of London in the UK. So we have some of the largest legal firms in the UK's headquarters based in Birmingham. And we're also one of the best universities in the region as well. So we have that real kind of great access straight into those law firms. So we can actually bring those firms onto campus. They start to speak to students, they start to network with them, and then we send them to placements during the summer and over during the time as well, so they can really get that work experience, which puts them in a great place for when they're applying for traineeships and internships. So we send plenty of international students into really world-class law firms in the UK, but also internationally as well. And we've just actually launched our first international placement scheme where we've got students going to Canada next year to work with a Canadian law firm, but we're hoping to bring some into India and some in Hong Kong as well in the future.
Great. And I'm going to combine the next two questions because I think, and these will be for Ben, but we actually have a couple of... Those will probably go hand in hand.
Yep. So again, the entry requirements can vary depending on which subjects you're studying and which qualifications that you're doing as well. So the best place to actually go initially is to look on our website, and you'll be able to click by country and by which exam board you're doing as well, and it'll tell you the exact breakdown. But in terms of what qualifications you need, we look for a high school level or equivalent to join a university program here. So it's that kind of first year out of sixth form, looking into finishing your education and moving into higher education. So that's where we differ from other jurisdictions, is that we have it as an undergraduate degree. So it's the first degree that you do. You don't require any previous study outside of that as well. So in terms of SATs and things like that, they are important because they feed into the entry requirements, but only so far as they get you into the door here at Birmingham. And then everything else is on you once you start and join us here as well.
Strictly be used for American postgraduate law schools, is that right?
Yes, so we have something here called the LNAT, which is the Law National Aptitude Test. But here at Birmingham, we don't actually take that either. We don't ask students to take that either because we found it didn't really help us with anything. It was just another test that people had to go through. So we try and be as open and flexible as possible, and we've tried not to put too many extra barriers in to get students onto our program.
I think standardized, stick around for the next session. We'll talk about the relevance of standardized testing. So Joyce, for you, a question, how does profiling help in choosing the degree and or university to attend?
Well, I think the profiling that we do certainly helps in choosing the degree, in that you will find your top course areas. So, for example, I mean, if you were interested in law, you'd get law related would be one of your top ones, and you might then get mechanical engineering related. So it is homing in on those sort of broader course areas. So it then reduces your problem to a smaller one. And then, of course, what it does is within the program, you then can expand on the area that you've chosen to look at, one of your top ones, and it will then list the course titles. So you're then looking at the titles, and you can, as you go down the titles, investigate what that means. Additionally, associated with our program, we have something called degree course descriptions, and that is it's a resource now. It used to be a book. It's a resource online where, for example, if you are interested in biological sciences, to move over to a different subject, it will help you to understand what is involved in the actual degree course in the first year, the second year, how courses vary. And this is written generally by admissions tutors from universities, not about a particular university, but about in general. So it helps you to sort of get that feel of what's involved in that particular area. So you either home in on the course area, or you find out more about the general course area and decide that's not for you, and then you try a different one. So we are therefore giving you different ways of moving forward in terms of the investigation before you get into the particular university. Now, in terms of the university itself, what we do, you've got filters. So you can filter on accommodation, you can filter on campus, whether it's a green site or whether it's a town civic university. You can filter on size, you can filter on various other things. So there are filters within the system to enable you to, again, home in on particular universities before you do the fine-tuning at the end. There are also filters to enable you to put in your forecast grades or the number of points you're likely to get, and that will, again, reduce your choice because it will show you within that range what universities are likely to be available for you to study that course. I hope that helps.
Add to your profile when pursuing an undergrad law degree.
Yeah, fantastic. And again, really great questions. They are incredibly important when applying for actually all universities, especially high-profile ones here in the UK. The personal statement or the statement of purpose is a really kind of important thing that comes alongside that as well. So Here at Birmingham, we do take them incredibly seriously. We don't always, it might surprise people, we don't always look for law extracurricular activities. So a lot of times people believe that they need to have work experience or have shadowed solicitors or things like that. And it's actually incredibly hard for students to do that if they don't have a personal connection. And it's really not a way for us to kind of decide who comes in and who doesn't based on that sort of interest. So things that we look for that are really interesting are where students have volunteered. If they've given their time freely to support charities or activities they support and believe in, because it comes back actually to what I said right at the start about Birmingham being a civic university. We're very much based in the community and supporting the community and trying to improve it here in Birmingham. And we look for students who can reflect those sorts of values in the work they've done previously. So volunteering for things they care about, but also kind of paid work as well is really important. And because that can often be useful to support the students while they're studying. So knowing that they can deal well with people and that they're responsible and things like that. So it's not necessarily what you're doing, it's the reason for doing it and what you're getting out of it. So we don't necessarily look for set activities that happen. It's really about how you can explain to us how what you've done and what you've experienced is going to help you with a law degree and actually makes you a really great fit for the university you're applying for. And I think it's what we do here at Birmingham, but I'm sure it's also what other universities look for as well. They don't necessarily look for set title of activity. It's all about how your understanding of what you're doing is going to help you moving forward as well.
How well you can manage your time. I mean, if you are doing a part-time job and you're doing this, that, and the other, you're managing a lot of time. This is extremely important when you're away doing study and also when you become a lawyer.
Absolutely.
Right. Oh, well, thank you, Joyce Lane and Benjamin Atkins. And this is a hot topic this year, even hotter after the Ivy League acceptances came out on Tuesday night. So I suspect you may wish to join us for that. But again, I thank our speakers and I look forward to seeing you.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, David.
Thank you,
Joyce.
David.
Mr. Parker, you can start now.
Okay. Good evening. For those of you who have throughout the globe, we welcome you to this session, SAT, ACT testing. Is it relevant in 2021?
Hello.
Hearing what he has to say, Mr. Guard.
Hi, hello everyone. How are you? So this is about the standardized testing. We are Satin Paper, and we're completely one-on-one and online product. So which offers highly bespoke solutions, completely customized, delivered completely online. So we currently work with students from some, I think, 30 odd different countries and some 55 cities in India. Well, I mean, we work basically with the SAT, the ACT, and the APs. Over to you, David. I can't hear you. You're muted.
That's because I'm muted. Yes, well, Mr. Guard, you actually have got
Yeah.
have a very small round table.
Yeah, fantastic. Hi, everyone. My name is Erica, and I'm from Arbor Bridge. We are also a one-on-one online tutoring company for, we've specialized in standardized exams, but we basically sort of do it all in terms of tutoring. We have specialized in online one-on-one work for over the last decade. That's specifically the avenue that we've been going down for a very long time. So no one could have predicted 2020, but I will say that we were uniquely suited and sort of ready to take on the challenge of that. Our philosophy as far as test preparation goes is and especially more so now, is that your time is valuable, and that if you're going to invest time into this preparation, that it should be effective and efficient. We are not of the mindset that tutoring or that prep for this exam should be ever overshadow the other priorities that you have. You are not a test score. And so if you are going to put in the time to prepare for this exam, it should really be as beneficial as possible. So we're a very data-driven, research-based company. We have our own curriculum. We have over 500 lessons written for each of these tests. And so it's really about tailoring a program that works for each individual student. So, with that in mind, I think that informs a lot of our attitude towards some of the changes coming and how to approach these tests. So I'm excited to speak a little bit more about that.
I can bring a lot of concerns that my clients have had this year. So if you are an attendee and you're sort of thinking about these tests for the first time, what you may or may not know is the tests this year have experienced a huge tests were considered the gold standard. So as the year wore on, as someone who works with clients, we had different strategies. I certainly encouraged all my clients to take exams and take as many as they. Moving in that direction, I guess Cal Tech or Cal State was one of the first ones to go test blind.
Yeah, I believe it was Cal Tech.
I think that sounds right, which is.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's an amazing win-win for everyone, right? And what has led us here is very interesting circumstances which are driven more by insecurity than by anything else. Was the fact that students have not been able to take the test in specific areas. But I think we'll have to wait for data from College Board as to how many tests were actually administered for the SAT and how many tests were actually administered for the ACT. What I find here is that somebody who has the willingness and the drive to take the test is taking the test come what might happen. For example, one of the cities in India where the SAT has not been conducted ever since the lockdown was initiated in India, and that's almost 13, 14 months now, is Mumbai. But for all the students that we work with from Mumbai, I tell you, almost 98% of them have taken the test, even if it means that they have to travel to other cities where they were sure that the test would be conducted. So, you look at it from three sides. From a student side, it's a win-win, right? You can try your hands at the test. If you score well, nothing like it, you go ahead and report it. And if you don't score well, maybe you can still, put in your application without submitting the score. From the admission officers, I think the greatest insecurity was that, if the students are not able to take the test, how would the application numbers happen? And the initial premise that led to the test optional wave was an anticipated drop in the number of applicants given the COVID. But what it turns out is working for everybody. The numbers have gone up by 40%, 50% in a year where we expected them to drop. So going forward, I think this test optional thing is going to continue. Now, whether in a test optional environment, an application without score, especially for an international student from a school where other students have submitted a score, would be treated at par or not. That is something for the consultants to decide, and that is something that we'll understand it backwards as we have more application data, admission data running into us.
Yeah, Erica?
Yeah, I think, a lot of what our advice has been for students, and I think you hit the nail on the head with, if a student wants to take it, they're going to take it. And that's sort of, they're very strong-minded and willed in that way. Our advice and kind of in our realm, because what we like to do is work a lot with counselors and with families and say, okay, what's going to work for you? What's going to work for your overall workload? What's going to work for sort of your overall profile? Because, I think as much as students might have these scores and be able to submit they're becoming less relevant overall. They're not going to be sort of the they're not going to be sort of the end all be all of your application. They may be sort of the straw that that breaks the camel's back, and like, yes, may help you get over that edge, but it's not going to guarantee anything at this point. And so like part of our process, for example, is we have all students take a diagnostic up front, just so that before we can engage in anything, because we want to see, where are you right now? Where do you want to go? Does this make sense overall for you to invest so much time and energy? Because it's a lot of work to prepare for these tests. It's like taking on an additional extracurricular activity or sport. Even we compare it a lot to preparing for the sport, and so if that doesn't work within your overall profile and what makes sense for everything else in your academic sort of resume at that point, then it might not be the best thing for you to prepare. So we like to have really open and honest discussions with people about this, because it's an investment. It's an investment of your time, your money, your energy, and it might be better spent elsewhere. But if you are willing to prepare for it and put in the time for it, then we of course want to make sure, again, that your time is spent wisely while preparing for the exam.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Questions, and the questions that I'm seeing, at least 3 on the subject of, is it really true that these test optional schools won't rate you down for not turning in a test? Though, if I had 2 students, one with
I think an application from a student who has not submitted the score would be viewed at par only if it can be shown or it can be felt that he did not have a chance to take a test. Let's understand, the standardized test score is, and I was just hearing Mr. Viral Doshi, who probably is one of the greatest experts here in India, that the tendency to doctor your application is the highest this part of the world. So you're talking about application essays, projects, internships, everything which large number of students have a tendency to fail, which is something which the US admission officers are I think well aware of. So here you have something which is fair, which puts everybody on the same common platform. Hence, the preference for a standardized test, I think, is very obvious, especially for students who come from international locations. In India, if you count the state boards in, there are about 40 different education systems. It is going to be a Herculean, if not an impossible task for an admission officer to equalize the grades from all these places. Certainly not possible.
Rural area of the Southeast, and a straight A.
Absolutely.
School, which is the oldest school in the country with a very established reputation. And so, and that's, the word standardized.
Yeah, I think that, the dilemma has always been just how these test scores are viewed. Right. I think they can be helpful. And, I think there are a lot of skills and things that are taught through preparing for this exam that do help students eventually. It's not completely out of left field from how they built this test to sort of what they do end up testing, kind of later on. But yeah, I think the value of the test is what is starting to be addressed a little bit more now. So yeah, because we've predominantly worked with international students. In my tenure, I've been at this company for almost 10 years now, and we've done online work. We primarily started with international students, and so it's especially they do feel the pressure a little bit more because they don't have that benefit of being in the States and having a little bit more in-depth knowledge of where these students are and how their curricula has been built up to this point. So yeah, at the end of the day, like you said, if they're going to take the test, they're going to take the test. It's just a matter of what makes the most sense and how much time and effort they should be putting into it, and just advising them appropriately on that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no much. Absolutely.
I can't really imagine that that's a very legitimate reason not to take a test anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
P-test at this point.
Well, now especially that subject tests are no longer part of the equation.
Right.
I've personally have seen an uptick in students who are eager to take AP exams just to have another distinguishing factor for all. And again, it's not to say that it's going to tip the scales hugely in their favor, but it's gilding the lilies more than anything of what else they're putting in. So I think we were chatting about this a little bit earlier, but it's going to be very interesting over the next few years, and unfortunately there's no hard and fast way to be able to tell how the admissions folks are going to look at all this information, and I don't envy their job at this point to try and almost recalibrate everything that goes on in a student's application. But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that having these AP scores will hurt, I guess.
No, and again, AP scores, you've always had the option of not reporting. But
yes.
But I think, well, in my opinion, the ACT, maybe the subject test moving out is a welcome move, because the subject tests at best were shallow tests, right? The AP is a deep dive. That's one of the fundamental differences between the two of them. Second, subject tests, apart from the fact that they were mandatory requirement for some colleges, or they would help you build your academic profile for some other colleges, they serve no other purpose, right? So students would invariably end up taking subject SATs on the areas that they've been studying at the school already, and that adds little to you, right? The moment the APs come in, couple of factors. Number one, you can get college credits against those. So which to an international student, is big, because say when I'm going to college in the first year, I would be better off studying one subject less. It will give me the time to acclimatize with that new situation, which can be very, very different from the kind of environments that I've been accustomed to, right? The second major difference here is, as a student who's in the high school, the junior and the senior years, I would be very sensitive to how I choose to spend my time. So a lot of kids from IB, come to me that if I'm doing IB, should I still do the APs, right? I say yes, go ahead and do the APs, but do not do APs on the subjects that you're studying at school already. So the idea is if I'm studying 6 IB subjects and I choose to spend another 30, 40, 50 hours of my life, at least I should end up learning something new. So the APs also, offered you a phenomenal opportunity to develop, to develop insights into a subject area that you've not been able to choose at your school because the number of subjects that you can choose to study at school is limited. For that's correct, but the US system, yeah, yeah. No, the US system is not available here in India, so you don't have AP courses. So kids have to prepare on their own and just take the AP exams. So my idea here is, if I was studying a calculus at my IB curriculum, if I'm doing IB Math double AHL, and I do a calculus BC AP, which would have at least a 70 to 80% overlap. If I had to spend the time preparing for the AP, I'm much better off doing an AP in statistics, number one, which is a different dimension, or maybe doing an AP in psychology, which shows, that I've cared to learn a subject which I could not include as a part of my subject choice at school because of obvious limitations. That I think is a stronger statement for me to make as an applicant to a college.
Yeah, I think what we deal with a lot of similar students who say I want to just have these AP scores in my back pocket for a new subject. And again, it's the honest discussion you have with them. It's, do you have the time to invest into that? You're doing an entire new course that students spend classroom time, basically about 6 to 9 months in learning. Do you have the time to put in yourself to teach yourself that? And then to be able to be successful in this exam at the end of it. So, yes, there are very motivated students, but I think it's a reality check that you have to have with students.
Correct. Absolutely.
Does this make sense for you overall? And like you said, there's a ton of overlap in the AP and IB framework. I mean, we even built a whole resource that said, how do you apply those to SAT subject tests? There's so much overlap in those, and at the end of the day, they're just another test score. But yeah, you just want to make sure that these tests, as important as they are, and as helpful as they are to their overall application, they're only as helpful as they're able to produce in terms of their result. And you want to make sure that they can be successful and present something that is actually useful in their overall profile. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely clear. You're good.
Mostly been geared towards, is it really true that there are universities that don't care if you don't submit a score? And that suspicion is the same kind of hermeneutics of suspicion I've had.
Yeah, I mean, my and you would know better as a counselor. I think we spend a lot of time learning about the tests and less about kind of how admissions is going to use them. But my sense from a lot of the chatter I've heard amongst our counselor partners and things like that is that, it's not, again, it's not going to be the first thing that they look at all. They're going to look at the rest of your, I think maybe in the past, especially, 10, 15 years ago, they'll look at your scores first and then everything else in your application. Now I think they look at, probably your school grades, sort of your overall profile, everything like that. And then at the end of it, if you have a score, they'll look at that. So the order in which they're sort of considering all these things is what is changing and evolving. So, I don't think it matters in the initial evaluation, but maybe as they get down to, okay, now we've sort of cut down this list of people and we're going to look a little bit further into it, then that might be something that they consider. But I don't think they're going to lump it into the same pool of people, from the very beginning. Yeah. Yeah.
That makes so much sense. That actually makes so much sense. It's like, the scores on the school, the transcript remains the most important thing. And that is something, again, which a student cannot fake. Right. Although, again, the challenge to the admission officer is that so long as all these students, they came from a single education system, let's say if they were all IB students or they were all IGCSE students, A-level students, which is a standardized system, but somebody who's coming from an MP board, Madhya Pradesh board, somewhere in the heartland of India, and claims a transcript which has a 98% on his grade 11, how do we and where do we place that? And if we're not going to place that, are we going to exclude this student from the applicant pool? So that's a challenge. For international students, and again, I'm just talking about India. How do you compare them from people from Vietnam and people from Singapore and people from Korea and China, for example? And let's say on the other hand, places like Ethiopia and Namibia, where do we put them together? That's the
client this year who is a U.S. national, and he did all of his school in the U.S. except he took his junior year and was at an IB school in Spain and did really well, but they actually did not figure those grades into his GPA because the school policy was only to
Yeah,
yeah, please go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying, I'm just happy I'm not on an admissions committee because I think their job is just exponentially more difficult now. And again, I think that comes with the evaluation of kind of the overall system as a whole, which I feel like has been evaluated in many arenas, but especially with this, and being able to say, all right, what really matters? How do we carefully and thoughtfully evaluate students that are coming to us? And it's hard because I think on their end with the volume of students that a lot of them are dealing with. You look at UCLA, who got what was it, 200,000 applicants. I went to UCLA, so go Bruins, but at the same time, I can't imagine going through all those applications. So it should be very interesting to, I'd be interested also to see the difference between those test blind versus test optional schools, see how that affects a lot of it. And I think I saw something where someone was asking about test blind versus test optional, but test blind just means that they are not even going, even if you submit it, they don't. Exactly.
how many students apply test optional, but I don't know if they're going to give us the acceptance rate side by side, test optional versus test submitting students. And really, it's going to take 4 years for them to see, all right, how did our test blind students perform?
Yeah, and just kind of evaluating the system, as it were. It's just the kind of love of rankings of schools and the prestige of schools. I know a lot of students that we work with, especially internationally, they come to us and say, we're only going to go to the States if we get into the top 20 schools, which severely narrows the what is reasonable for them and what can be done. And so I think that is sort of a culture thing that is going to have to change overall, but should buckle up. It's going to be a fun.
It is, yeah. Well, and it's, with students who right, a lot of my Indian students are only interested in the Ivy League or schools that are so good that you could thrive at. But they make the very good point that they plan to come back to India to work, and that degree salary.
Mm-hmm.
If they go to the U.S. to study at a school that no one in India really knows of, then it's not going to be to their great advantage.
Yep.
Let's see. So I've got a couple of questions.
This I do not know much about. I do not know much about.
I think there has to be a consultant to answer this question. Don't ask desperate people. This is an advisor's response.
Still kind of is everything in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, I think just their use of American exams in particular just don't. There's a limited number, I think, of schools that use the SAT maybe for evaluation, but for the most part, it's sort of what you do in A levels largely determines.
Right, and I think the idea is this going. Speaking of gilding the lily, is this going to give me a little bit of street cred as a scholar? I just don't. My instinct is to say no. May not have any effect. All right. Other questions from our 80 member studio audience, believe it or not.
Yeah, for the most part, I think, I would imagine maybe for the next 2-3 years that it's going to be test optional largely. What Abhinav said before, I agree with. I think it's the trend that's going to continue on from here.
It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's going to stay for good. We'll have to learn how to make the most out of it, I guess.
Yeah, and I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. These tests overtake a lot of students' lives, and unnecessarily a lot of the time as well. And I think it's important to evaluate what you're spending your time on and kind of what's valuable overall to your profile, and being able to do things other than just study for this test.
I have a very different view here, Erika. I mean, I think, as tutors, it is our job to guide the students better. Right. So whereas I would want my students to go apply with the test to the top universities, but there is something called a diagnostic test which every single student can take, and which I'm very sure you must all be making them take at Arbor Bridge as well. And over a period of time, you also would have, kind of a matrix, an average matrix that a student starting from what score realistically can improve to what score. So what I have started doing of late is those of my students who get a real low score, a very low score, something like somebody getting a 750 on the SAT diagnostic. We actively go ahead and advise them not to do the SAT, go to the test optional route.
Yeah.
Which I think is being forthright, being honest and blunt with the student, because somebody starting with a 750, in my opinion, is unlikely to go hit a 1400, even given a lot of training and tutoring.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're very much of the same philosophy. I mean, that's why we've put so much time into evaluating how our students have done. So we've done a ton of research, and that's why we do the diagnostic. We do it before they even engage our services. And then And then we have data that we say, okay, from our previous students, all of our previous students, so this is actual students, their exact same diagnostic score. Here is the percentage of students that improved however many points with our program. So, if a student comes to us with 1,000 and they say, we want to get up to 1,500, I can say, look, it's not, okay, first of all, I've seen crazy things on this test. I've seen students improve large amounts, but the percentage of students from your score who have gotten to that point, even with our longest package, is probably about 2%.
Correct. That's right.
This, just to be completely honest and upfront with you about this information, and that's why we pulled, especially with our Asian students that we have around the world. They're very numbers driven. They're like, all right, what are our chances?
We're crazy about tests. We're crazy about tests. So I think out here, I get students who scored a 1580 wanting to take the test again to get the missing 20 points.
Yeah, that happens a lot here.
But I think it's working for the students' advantage, the test optional thing. Reason being, someone who's unlikely to score very well in the erstwhile situation, this student, because there was no other route available, would have spent some 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12 months preparing for the SAT or the ACT and still reaching a score which was at best mediocre. Mm-hmm. Now, some active, counseling by the counselors, by the test prep people can tell them to probably utilize this time elsewhere into improving their school grades or working onto their extracurriculars and choosing a test. I mean, a college where, they know with the test optional application, they stand a very good chance.
Right.
So in that sense, I view it as extreme, very, very positive, step.
Much about the prestige of the school they go to. We have parent management to deal with, which is an entirely additional burden.
Yeah.
So they want.
Yeah, and I think that kind of harkens to sort of the planning aspect of all of this, which, I think a lot of students didn't necessarily have the advantage of in an unprecedented pandemic year. But being able to, obviously, starting test prep in your freshman year is not going to be helpful. You haven't even covered all the material yet. But, generally we advise that students start their preparation, doing a diagnostic test like end of 10th grade year, somewhere around then, makes the most sense because you've covered all the relevant material up to that point. So if you're in the A-level system, after you finish your GCSEs, you've essentially covered all that information. So doing it at that time and then planning out your year and your workload in a way that makes sense. Saying, that summer between 10th and 11th grade can be so helpful for students to do that heavy lifting of your prep. So when you get into your school year, you're not panicked trying to learn 20 things while still trying to keep your grades up and then trying to do extracurriculars on top of it. So, really doing that planning ahead of time can save you so much headache down the line. And so that, I think, has been an even bigger emphasis now. Does this make sense in the overall scheme of things? If I give myself a little bit more time to breathe and digest. Yeah, exactly. When I was 16, I did not want to sit down and do prep for that long, I actually actively, my mom tells this story to me all the time. She apparently signed me up for a course and I yelled at her. I said, "Get your money back. I'm not gonna take a class. I can teach myself everything." So I turned out okay, but ironic I'm in this field now. But I think it's important to think about your overall happiness because we want to. I know a lot of your success might be tied to it in your mind, and we want to help you be successful in that way. But if you're studying for 80 hours a week, you're probably not getting sort of the mental benefit.
If you if you get yourself over your head, you're just going to have to continue, flailing. and I get this from Indian students very often, what is our personal statement and how you should use it. And it's and you shouldn't just write a brief history of your academic triumphs. That makes for a really poor essay. And I guess what I can
Sawyer. Sawyer, right?
New York Times publishes 10 college essays that they particularly liked. So all I have time to say about the personal statement is that I don't have time to say anything about it, but you do need to take it seriously. You do need to devote time to it. A lot of my clients end up
Thank you. I think we're running out of time.
very, very much thank Abhinav America.
Thank you so much.
Tremendously helpful. I've certainly learned a lot, and I trust that our students have too. Thank you for joining us, everybody, today for this event created by Writers Cake, and at I guess 8 o'clock IST, there's going to be a session on internships with Chris Ju, who graduated from Penn, and she has great. This is one of the more important things that you can do while you're an undergraduate. So thanks to everybody, and I hope the rest of your weekend. It was nice meeting you.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you. I enjoyed the session. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Erica, do I so you're a good person to refer people.
Hello, everybody. Please note that you can meet the partners for a one-on-one session in the arena. If you're confused on how to go there, click on your alerts and see the alert for the booths. It'll take you to the arena directly. We're due to start in a minute. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today in this wonderful event curated by Writers QI. My name is Oliver, and I'm the Marketing and Communications Director of CCIR Academy, and we're an educational enterprise based in Cambridge, UK. Now, over at CCIR Academy, we provide a variety of online educational experiences where students get to work directly with industry experts and leading academics from the University of Cambridge and the University of Oxford. We place a big emphasis on ensuring that the knowledge that our students learn in our programs is ultimately useful and applicable in their lives and in their careers. And in a way, that's what today's talk is about. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you your speaker, Chris Chu. Chris is an incoming software engineer at Amazon who is currently completing her degree in computer science at the University of Pennsylvania. Additionally, Chris is also what we call an industry advisor for one of CCIR's upcoming programs, the Cambridge Startup Tech Camp, where she has worked to help us at CCIR design a coding bootcamp for high school students that aims to cultivate the practical skills necessary for a future career in tech. So in what follows, Chris will be sharing her insights on how you can build your personal and educational profile to optimize your chances of getting into a top tech company like Amazon. And towards this end, she'll talk a little bit about CCIR's Tech Camp, but mostly she'll be focusing on the kinds of extracurriculars and the kinds of education that you need to pursue in order to propel yourself into a career in tech. Chris, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, I'm really glad to be here. So first, let me share my presentation. We'll begin shortly. Everyone can see my screen, right? All good. Cool. So welcome, everyone. Today, I'm going to share some tips and advice on how to get into the tech industry. And as a student, of course, the best way to get your foot in the door is through internships. But before we think about how to get into tech, let's first think about why. As a programmer, what you will be doing every day at work will, of course, be coding. So what is coding all about, and is it the right path for you? So coding at its core is really all about logic. You're using logic as a building block to create programs and build larger software systems. So if you really like the logical way of thinking, or you really enjoy the clarity of laying everything out, then you might really enjoy coding. In a way, it's a lot like Lego, where you have these basic building blocks, which you can combine and design in any way you want. So out of these Lego pieces, you could arrive at a castle, if you so wish, or equally well, you can build a truck. So I think there is a close analogy between this Lego building and coding. So apart from the traditional tech companies, coding is actually very versatile. So it's heavily used in other sectors as well, like finance, game development, animation studios. All of these places use coding heavily. And also, coding is widely used in research. A lot of times it's very interdisciplinary, and just some examples that I can think of are linguistics, psychology, neuroscience, and cognitive science, just to name a few. So all of these disciplines use coding in their research a lot to gather data and then analyze data to derive insights. So coding is really versatile. Now let's see some real-world examples for what you can build with code. So if you grow your coding skills, one example is you could totally build a game, and you can bring whatever is in your imagination into reality. Another example is this guy built a hair-cutting robot with just code on his computer and some tools in the garage. So that could come in really handy during the quarantine times. Also, if you really get good at coding and you gather a bunch of people, if you guys know what you're doing, you can totally propel a rocket into space. And SpaceX is doing exactly that. So on a more down-to-earth note, if you are good at coding, you can totally build an online shopping platform, which all of us use every day, and we kind of can't live without it nowadays. And to expand on that, there's actually an entire economy of sharing that has blossomed because of these technological platforms like Airbnb, Uber, and Lyft. So code has a lot of implication for our real lives, and it has the power of bringing a lot of people around the globe together and allowing them to share resources in a more efficient way. So now that we've talked about the power and versatility of coding, let's think about what are the resources for learning it. So the first thing that comes to our mind is of course computer science courses that are offered at your school or at your university. So these are definitely good entry points for start learning to code. But along the way, you will realize that YouTube is actually also an amazing resource where a lot of tutorials are helpful either to clarify concepts that you are confused about in class or simply learn more about extra stuff to do in your project. So the YouTube coding tutorials has been very helpful for me along the way, and I'm sure I will be watching a lot of these tutorials after I go into work. So in my opinion, coding is the most self-teachable discipline nowadays, simply because of the amount of information and tutorial available online. A lot of these are very high quality, so I highly recommend any of you who are interested in coding to check out these resources. But of course, especially for beginners, a lot of the times we need more guidance and structure to our learning. And in that case, I think the best way for you to get good at coding in a short period of time is through immersive coding camps. So personally, I started coding when I took a summer class at Cornell, and that is a very intensive, I took classes every day, and during that time, I feel like I start from someone who doesn't know anything about coding to starting to love coding. So that made a big difference in my life. Okay, so now that we've covered the basics for code and why it's interesting, if you decide that this is the right path for you and you want to pursue it further, then the natural next step is to think about internships that maybe you can get at a tech company. So let's think about all the different stages for getting this internship. So the first step is writing a good resume, where you will showcase the projects and experiences that you have. And if you get selected, the next step is an online coding assessment, where you will get a link that contains 2 to 3 timed coding questions, and you do that at your own time. If you pass that, typically companies will invite you for interviews. So there are 2 types of interviews. One is a technical interview, where you meet an interviewer who asks you more coding questions. It can also be a behavioral interview where they assess you on your communication skills, your work style, whether you're good at teamwork, so that they know if you can be a good fit for their company. So let's start with the first step, which is resume. And of course, the most important part to a resume is not the rhetoric, but rather the content. So I'm going to focus on how to actually build your coding skill and your coding experience so that you have projects and experiences to write on your resume. So one important thing to realize is that coding is not something that you can learn by reading or just accepting information, but rather you have to actually roll up your sleeves and do it. So that's the key to becoming better at coding. So on that end, I think class projects are very valuable experiences. You can also look out for hackathon opportunities organized by your school or external organizations. There are a lot of hackathons happening, and I think those would be really good places to learn and grow your coding skill. There are also coding challenges organized by Google, for example. There are a lot of other coding challenges. This is just an example. So if you check out these opportunities when you're learning to code, I think you will eventually build a very rich profile to show off on your resume. So if we can chart a roadmap for the journey from a beginner to a more experienced coder, initially you will definitely need to learn a programming language as well, and actually grasp the theoretical concepts really well so that you have a solid foundation to work off of. So after that, you might start doing toy projects at school or on your own time. So these will typically be solo projects. And after you're comfortable with that, you will start building more real-world projects. And you will probably also do them in a team rather than just by yourself. Because as the projects get larger and more complicated, you'll inevitably need teammates in order to complete it. So hackathons would be a great opportunity to form a team and code something up during a 2 to 3 day duration. And by the end, you will have something to demo and show off. So last but not least, I think a great way to learn is to participate in open source development. So open source is actually not that different from actual professional work as a software engineer, but instead of keeping the code base a secret and a property of the company, the open source community decide to make the code available to anyone, and anyone can contribute. So if you feel like you have enough experience to contribute to an open source project, definitely try that. And if you put that onto your resume, it will be very impressive to a recruiter because they know that you have an experience that can match the level of work and like all the skills that they need for an actual software engineer. So as you start learning to code, you'll at some point find yourself kind of have to choose an area to dive deeper into. So there are actually a lot of different tracks in coding. These are not an exhaustive list, just some common areas that I can think of. So if you do work as a software engineer, what you will mostly be doing is building software infrastructures. And you might also do a lot of web development, whether in front end or back end. So these infrastructures will be used by people every day, and during the process, a lot of data will be generated. So these data will need to be analyzed by someone so that they can derive insight and help the business make their decision in a better way. So a data analyst is the second track that I listed here. So some typical areas that are popular right now are like big data analytics. And also in finance, they have high demand for data analysts. So if you are good at coding, you have a lot of different options in the industries you can join. So the third area that I listed here is robotics. So there are companies that specialize in autonomous vehicle or drone production. So for robotics, they will mostly be focusing on how to get the robot to interact with the surrounding world, how to make them recognize objects. So this is a different emphasis in a different area. The fourth area that I listed here is graphics, which can include game development, animation development, augmented reality, or virtual reality. This is kind of its own area, and if you're interested in the visual aspects of coding, then this might be the area for you. The last one I listed is research, which has opportunities in both the industry and academia. So in industry, there are actually a lot of researcher positions where they work on innovations or patents. In academia, there are also a lot of interdisciplinary research opportunities. So with all of these different areas, how do you find which one is for you? I think the best way is to try it out, get some experience. So after you complete a project in one area, you'll probably know if you're good at doing that kind of work or whether this is attractive to you. So I think definitely try stuff out and you will know. One very good opportunity on that end is the Cambridge Startup Tech Camp organized by the Cambridge Center for International Research. So as I've emphasized before, project-based learning is really the most effective in the coding area. And this tech camp offers exactly that. It's a 10-week project-based coding camp. And during the process, you will build at least 5 major projects. It will also expose you to a lot of different disciplines so that you can see which one fits your interest the best. So some projects are in the area of fintech, which is the intersection of finance and technology. There are also projects in biotech, natural language processing, computer vision, data science. So after you're exposed to these different disciplines, you'll have a better idea of how to choose your path. There will also be a lot of workshops hosted by startup CEOs for you to gain some real-world first-hand experience of what it's like to be an entrepreneur and innovating with tech. So the highlighting feature of this tech camp, which I think is really helpful for students, is that all of the coding projects are real-world, has industry support, and they are designed and taught by Cambridge instructors who are either PhD candidates or graduates with a lot of industry experience. At the same time, you will also have a lot of exposure to what a tech startup is like and how it works, how to turn an idea into a product. So I think this is an excellent opportunity to grow your coding skill and kind of start your journey in tech if you're interested. So be sure to check out the link listed here to get more details. Okay, so now that we've covered ways to build your coding skills and enrich your resume, we should have plenty of things that we can put on our resume. Next, let's think about how to actually write it, like how to make it effective. One thing that we need to realize is that recruiters and HRs don't really have a lot of time to read through all the details. Because there are a large volume of applications every year, when they're flooded with resumes, they typically only have 15 seconds to take a glance at your resume, see if you're a good fit, which means that we really need to grab their attention. So to stand out, your resume needs to be specific and quantified. Make sure all of your bullet points start with action verbs like developed, designed, implemented, that kind of verbs. And also a very nice way to make you stand out is to quantify what you did and the impact it had. So this helps a lot with making things more specific. Next, let's see some examples of what I mean by that. So on the left, we have a resume entry that is quite generic. So this person said, I worked on a public transit app and built the backend API. So there's not a lot of detail in here, and it's hard to know if this person did a really great job building this app or whether it's just so-so. Whereas in contrast on the right, we have the same job being described, but in a much better way. First, this person started with an action verb, created. So this person said, created a backend transit API that displays real-time departure times for New York City public transit systems. So this offers a lot more details without being too wordy. And at the end, this person said over 10,000 downloads in the first 6 months, which is a quantification of the impact so that the recruiter can know for sure that this person did a good job and they actually made something happen that is useful for a lot of people. Now that we've covered all the basics for resume, let's think about the next steps, which are coding assessment and interview. So how do you prepare for these? The first thing to learn is that these assessments and interviews, they really emphasize on data structure and algorithms. So there are actually courses in every computer science department on these topics. These are kind of the core curriculum. So make sure you really learn those courses well, because they will come in handy when you do an interview or prepare for the coding assessment. And when you're answering the coding question, you can use whatever language you're most confident and comfortable with. And in order to get good at these assessments, the key is to practice. And there are a lot of example questions on a platform called LeetCode, which is basically used by everyone. And make sure that before you go to your interview or do your coding assessment that you at least familiarize yourself with the questions on LeetCode and get a lot of practice is very, very helpful. During the interview, you should be prepared to talk about projects on your resume. So anything you put on your resume is fair game, and the interviewer might ask about it. So make sure that you don't forget the details about your project, so you make some preparation beforehand. Last but not least, I would like to talk about the application timeline in the tech industry. So usually, if you're a student at a university, fall recruitment is a time where most activity is happening. So it starts in September, and typically campus career fairs would happen by that time. So that is an excellent opportunity to meet employers and actually know what are the opportunities and how you can apply. Also, this is a time when big companies start to accept applications. And it's really important to apply early because most companies have a fixed headcount. So it's basically a rolling application, unlike a typical college application, which ends at a date, and then they review all the applicants. So if you apply later than you should, then probably that company has already filled all of the spaces available. So even if you are a perfect candidate, because you didn't apply early, then kind of you don't get the opportunity. So kind of mark the date of your campus career fair and all the application open dates, which means you should probably start thinking about preparing your resume during the summer so that you can be as prepared as possible for the fall recruitment season. So there is actually another way. So during the spring, there will be another wave of recruiting. So it kind of starts in January and February, and typically like smaller companies will still be hiring. Yeah, the key is to apply early, as I've mentioned before. So this is something to keep at the back of your mind because I think you guys are still going through college applications. So there's no need to stress about internship applications until later. This is just kind of for your information so that you kind of by when the time comes to apply for internships, you will know kind of how it works. As for resources on job search, the career service on your campus will be very helpful. They can help you improve your resume. They can help you with all the internship opportunities that they know of. You should also definitely attend the campus career fair. There's also, in the tech industry, another career fair that's quite famous, which is the Grace Hopper Conference. It's designed for women engineers to find opportunities. So be sure to check out the Grace Hopper Conference. I highly recommend it. And also, when you're doing job search, you should think about getting some referrals from people who are already working in the company. It can be alumni of your school or your acquaintance. So if you get the referral from someone you know, you're more likely to get an interview because they know the company, they know the HR, and they will probably recommend you to them, and it will help your application at least get the attention it deserves from the HR. And also, if you're searching for internships and jobs, job boards like Google Jobs or other platforms are also very helpful. You can definitely sign up for alerts so that you know all of the latest opportunities that are popping up. Yeah, so I think that's all from me. And if you're interested in the tech camp I mentioned before, which is an excellent opportunity, be sure to check out the link here.
Thank you so much, Chris. So we'll now open up the floor for some questions. I'll first read some of the questions that have already been posted in the Q&A.
Yeah.
So Chris, Thomas wants to know what the starting salary for a job like an entry-level software engineer at Amazon is like.
So it's like typically about $100,000 a year, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Anushka asked, when would you recommend a complete beginner to start coding, and which language?
So I think for a complete beginner, Java would be a good entry point. I kind of started with Python, and I think that's good too. So I would say Java or Python because both are popular, but Java is more structured because there are more restrictions on like the type of the variable. So I think Java would be like good for getting you disciplined in coding and not like having your code all over the place simply because Java is so strict. Yeah, but I think it kind of depends on your track because if you are interested in data related coding parts, then Python is definitely the mainstream. So it kind of depends on your area, and I think either Java or Python would be good.
Sivat asked, what kinds of projects did you start with and on which platform? I assume maybe they mean language, or I'm not sure what platform is referring to.
Yeah, so I can remember that the first project that kind of made myself proud is a hackathon project that I did after learning CS for a year. So in that project, I built kind of a mini game where we have a lot of planets in the solar system, and I used like the formula from Newtonian gravitation to kind of restrict where the planets could go. So it's kind of a very realistic simulation of how forces affect the orbit of the planets. And also I put in like spaceships that you can like propel or like put brakes on. So that was a Java project that I did with a graphics user interface, and it's just like a game. And it's really cool to see something like that actually working, and it's also fun. So that's one of the projects that I did.
Okay, so let me answer the question that Thomas asked about the CCR Tech Camp. Thomas asked, how does it differ from other coding camps, and what is the tuition? So I think the main difference between this and other boot camps is the entrepreneurship emphasis that it has. So the whole coding camp is geared towards getting you prepped and ready and geared up for a future career in tech. And whether that's a software engineering job at Amazon or at Google or starting your own startup, you're going to need skills not just in computer science, but also in leadership and entrepreneurship. And within the domain of coding skills, you're also going to need specific ones, like practically applicable skills that are useful within the industry. So the way the program has been designed is that you're working with other students, much like in an industry setting. You're doing projects, and you're building up your computer science skills. Meanwhile, you're interacting with startup founders, you're learning about leadership and entrepreneurship, and this way you're building a holistic sort of personal and skill profile that will propel you in your career moving forward. So the tuition for this program is, let me just double check. We have see, the tuition is $1,450 for full and £1,200 for early admissions. The application deadlines are May 14th for early bird and May 25th for regular admissions, and the program is set to start on June 5th. So Priyanka actually asked Chris for your LinkedIn, but I assume you can be found on LinkedIn just under your name. Yeah. So Priyanka could maybe reach out directly to you through there. Pawan asked, is it possible for you to share a sample profile with us? So I might need a little more information on that question, Pawan. I'm not exactly clear what you're asking there. Anjali has raised your hand. Anjali, would you like to jump in? Okay. So maybe I can say a little bit more about the tech camp. What we've done there is we've collaborated with CCR has collaborated with 6 startups that were all sort of based out of either Oxford and Cambridge. We reached out through our network because CCR has been founded by Cambridge alumni, including myself. And we reached out through the alumni network to find startups that were willing to work with us and willing to share their experience and insights and input into the coding camp. So this coding camp really is something that's been designed by insiders in the industry and who really understand what sorts of skills you need for the tech industry specifically. So Anjali, what exactly are you able to speak, or you could also just post in the chat if you would like to.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to say that some of the programs that the students have done have been fantastic. So I was just sort of, going to say that. But I think I'm waiting for you all to finish, and then I'll give a closing statement. That's okay. I'm just going to leave the stage. So.
Yeah, fantastic. So if you have any more questions about the tech camp, about internships, or even about our other programs, such as the Future Scholar and the one-on-one, you're more than welcome to come to the CCR booth. Otherwise, you can also visit our website at www.cambridge-research.org. So thank you guys, and thank you so much, Chris, for joining us.
Sorry, Oliver. I think I'm seeing one more question in the chat, which asks, is there any age criteria and prior coding knowledge requirement for the camp?
The camp is targeted at high school students, and there is no prior coding knowledge requirement. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah. Excellent. So thank you so much, Chris, for joining us. This was a super helpful and informative presentation that you gave, and thank you everyone else for joining us. All right.
Bye.
Bye now.
Hi, Oliver. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Something happened there with the technical stuff. So, Oliver, do you want to carry on finishing what you were saying? You can find Oliver and Chris in the CCIR booth if you would like to go. I just wanted to take a minute to thank everyone for attending this fabulous session. It's been a pleasure to host over 1,000 people today. From 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., we've had an amazing, tremendous response. And I wanted to take a minute to thank my team, Tanaz Khan, Akash, Srinivas, Meher from Creative Marketing Force, and the CMF team for putting this together. Of course, this would not have been possible without the participants and speakers. And thank you so much for bearing with all the technical glitches and for all the sort of, mix-ups that were happening with it. A real shout out to my moderators, Vandana, Munjal, Anshu Bahanda, David Parker, and Monica Sagar, who unfortunately Monica could not join in, but she had prepped everything. For tech support, I'd like to thank Vikram from AirMeet. And lastly, all of you attendees, wishing you the very best in your college journey. Please join me in the Writers Key booth if you would like to have us answer any questions. And we would be more than happy to share our email. I'm putting down our email if you have any questions to meet any of the people here who've been in the sessions. We would be more than happy to do that. I also request you to go into the arena and go into the booths, because all the participants, you can meet them on a one-on-one session. So that's an amazing opportunity for you to actually reach out to them. So good night and have a great college application journey. I hope we meet again. Good night.
What's the greatest thing about fitness? It's never too early to start. Presenting the latest HRX U17 collection. So start now and keep going.